Raja Uvacha. The king said, Samicyanam, perfectly right. Vachaha, speeches. Brahman, O learned Brahmana. Sarvagyasya, one who knows all. Tava, your. Anaga, without any contamination. Tamaha, the darkness of ignorance. Vishiryate, gradually disappearing. Mayam, unto me. Hari, of the Lord. Katayataha, as you are speaking. Katam, topics. Translation by and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Maharaj Pariksit said, O learned Brahmana, you know everything because you are without material contamination. Therefore, whatever you have spoken to me appears perfectly right. Your speeches are gradually destroying the darkness of my ignorance, for you are narrating the topics of the Lord. Is this the, was this the right verse for today? Oh, was it today?
Yes, ladies, 3.
Huh?
Yes, ladies, 3 and 4.
Is the right one? Oh, I thought it was the one before. It's like 3 and 4. They did that yesterday. Okay. Purport. The practical experience of Maharaj Pariksit is disclosed herein, revealing that transcendental topics of the Lord act like injections when received by a sincere devotee from a person who is perfectly uncontaminated by material tinges. In other words, reception of the messages of Srimad Bhagavatam from professional men, heard by a Karmakandya audience, never acts miraculously as stated here. Devotional hearing of the messages of the Lord is not like hearing ordinary topics. Therefore, the action will be felt by a sincere hearer by experience of the gradual disappearance of ignorance. When a hungry man is given food to eat, he feels satiation of hunger and the pleasure of dining simultaneously. Thus he does not have to ask whether he has actually been fed or not. The crucial test of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is one should get positive enlightenment by such an act. Okay. Om Abhyāntimadandasya janam janam Shakala Chakshulanitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So Maharaj Pariksit is in a very, I could say, a very, not such an easy situation. He's been told he's going to die in 7 days. Sometimes you hear people, when they hear they're going to die, they go out and have a big party or something, or they try and squeeze out a bit more enjoyment, before that final moment of death. But here we see he's setting the example for a perfect devotee. He's taken shelter of the Lord, his spiritual master, and he's fixing his mind in devotional service, in remembering the Lord. The great determination. This is the power of, you could say, positive attitude, they call it. So that in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a nice verse actually in the 18th chapter that says that determination which is unbreakable, which is sustained with steadfastness by yoga practice, and which thus controls the activities of the mind, life and senses, the determination, the mode of goodness. So here, in that verse, we're hearing about the consciousness of someone whose mind is set on achieving one's spiritual goal in life. And what is that spiritual goal? He wants to go back to Godhead. The ultimate goal of life is to get liberation from this cycle of birth and death. And we're hearing about this. One's mind, one's intelligence, the senses are controlled, they're fixed in one's spiritual practices, and one cannot be deviated in any way. Of course, the question is, we may ask, how to achieve such positive enthusiasm and determination in the midst of the difficulties, you could say the impediments, distractions that naturally arise in people's daily lives. So the Bhagavad Gita is giving us and the Srimad Bhagavatam here is giving us some important insights into the situation. Every one of us here and everywhere in the world has this free will. Krishna has given us this free will and independence. And life is, ultimately, it's about how we're going to use our free will. That practically at every moment we have that choice, how we're going to use our free will. And according to how we use our free will, we become kind of conditioned to think in that way. See the world in that way and act in that way. And it is said, no power in creation to take away our free will. Because we even see that in the world today, people, there's so much, because of depression actually, it is said that actually the World Health Organization has issued this statement that in 2020 something, depression or unhappiness will be one of the biggest diseases in the world, next to heart disease. And we see that millions of people are taking intoxication. Millions of people are getting on these antidepressant drugs. And we see that alcoholism, drug addiction, it's based on our free will. You take alcohol and drugs enough times, soon you become so conditioned that you're just willing to surrender to that. And it appears that you just lost your free will. You're completely enslaved by that intoxication. But in fact, you're not. Bhagavad Gita tells us that we're all eternal living souls. We're caught in this reincarnation cycle, taking birth after life after life amongst these 8,400,000 species of life. And due to this long association with this powerful, deluding material energy, for so many thousands of lifetimes, our original pure spiritual consciousness is covered over by these layers and layers of material conditioning. It said that as soon as a baby can hold its head up, it's watching TV. People just right throughout their whole life, reading newspapers, TV, movies, social media. They're just being conditioned and programmed by all this materialistic propaganda that's just pumped into their hard drive, into their consciousness. And this has been going on for tens of thousands of lifetimes. And what this does, it just covers our original pure spiritual consciousness. Therefore, we learn in our bhakti school, we need to purify the consciousness. We need to purify the mind, purify the intelligence, purify the senses, clear away all this material contamination, and reawaken our eternal spiritual nature. Because regarding to choices and free will, life itself, really, it's about making choices, about making decisions. Every moment we're making choices and decisions about things. Life itself is also about learning and growing. And of course, life itself is about finding true happiness, true love. So the Bhagavad Gita tells us that in our life, the most important choices that we want to make in our life are choices that address our highest well-being, our spiritual well-being. And it's, when you think about it, it's all a part of, loving yourself, respecting yourself, catering to your real self-interest, planning out your best future. So, one thing we learn in Bhakti Yoga is that association plays a very significant part in how we create ourselves. When we associate with people who are positive, who have a positive perspective on life, engaging in positive activities, such as spiritual activities, Krishna conscious activities, we recondition ourselves in that way. We find that when we first come to Krishna consciousness, we may feel a little bit disorientated. We just kind of come from another world into it takes a while to integrate into Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees and this whole Vedic culture. So this is another kind of special virtue of a human life, that we have this freedom to choose who we want to associate with. As they say, it's saying if you associate with drunkards, generally you become a drunkard. You have to be very... So, the Bhakti Yoga teaches about the importance of spiritual communion, associating with devotees. Associating with those people who share our spiritual aspirations and understand us. As I said, living in this modern world, especially for the grihastas, and at the same time maintaining, out there working in the world and raising families and this and that. At the same time, trying to maintain spiritual practices and awareness can be very challenging. Therefore, the Bhakti Yoga, they teach us about the importance of regularly associating with spiritually minded friends who share our spiritual aspirations. This is what really charges our spiritual batteries. It gives us the spiritual strength and inspiration. It's kind of empowering. It empowers you to be respectful and kind and faithful to your spiritual values. Protects you against the influence of your lower nature, helps you to grow spiritually amidst the obstacles of life. According to our state of consciousness, we have certain attitudes, and we'll perceive, you could say, reality according to those required attitudes. It means we'll have a certain perception of the world around us. In America, they conducted this very elaborate survey. Actually, I read this, there was a whole Time magazine just dedicated to this survey. It's called Happiness. They had what they call social scientists went out and they interviewed hundreds and thousands of people from every walk of life. The rich people, the poor people, the single people, the married people, the old people, the young people, the business people, different cultures. And they're trying to find out, who's happy, who's unhappy, what makes people happy, what makes people unhappy. They're trying to find out, trying to figure it out, But the amazing thing is, at the end of that survey, they were quite surprised, because what they found was the happiest people in the world, or in America, wasn't the 500 club. the 500 richest people in America who are living in those big houses and enjoying their yachts. But actually they found it was religious people, the happiest people. And actually they found that the more a person is seriously involved in practicing religion, the more happy they are. I mean, some people, it's just they go to church on Sunday, they read the Bible sometimes or something, but some other people, they're praying every day, they're pouring their hearts out to the Lord. So this is what they found, that the people who put their lives in God's hands, they're always trusting that He has their best interest at heart, can actually cope better with life's difficulties. They're less stressed, more positive. They feel this natural comfort and joy and inner peace and sense of well-being more than non-believers. And so we see that's a fact. We're also experiencing this. When you put Krishna in the center of your life, you experience this fulfillment in life, this happiness, this sense of well-being and comfort and joy and inner peace. So much more than you could ever experience just trying to find happiness by your own endeavors in the world. So in the Bhagavad Gita we understand that this self-confidence and positive attitude comes naturally to one who understands their constitutional position as an eternal servant of the Lord. For people who understand that there's actually, that life isn't just eat, drink and be merry for tomorrow we die, but there's a certain purpose and vision and plan of the Supreme Lord behind this amazing, wonderful creation. And understand that we have to live in harmony with that law. We must act in accordance to this amazing, cosmic plan that the Lord has for us. And of course also, developing this positive attitude also means to recognize that we're all ultimately brothers and sisters of a common spiritual family. That we all have this universal connection with each other because we're all eternal servants of Krishna. And we should appreciate each other, we should support each other, despite our cultural and religious differences. The world. Unfortunately, when we look at the world today, we don't see so much harmony, but rather so much disharmony between, religions, cultures, classes of people. You take a look at the world today, we see there's a lot to be depressed about when you look at if you start looking into what's going on in the world, all the social problems, economic problems, environmental problems, so much moral degradation. We're going through pretty tough times in our present day. It's a very, you could say, not such a peaceful time. Not just economic and political turmoil, and but also we see a lot of, nature's coming up with some pretty horrendous blows to humanity. Like tornadoes and fires and tsunamis and earthquakes and volcanoes. And and we've got like all these diseases. We've got this the corona, it's raging over there in different parts of the world. It's not such a peaceful time. And Radha, it's a very turbulent time, and where everyone's passing their seatbelts, hoping everything's going to be okay. And of course everything can be okay. Also, I mean, it's just not just and we see that as a result of all these things, there's so many frustrated, confused, depressed people suffering in the world. You know, some people turning to drugs, alcohol, even suicide. You know, so many people, many suicide. This is getting really bad. Actually, I heard in Sweden now they've opened suicide motels. You check in, but you don't check out. You know, you pay some money, you go in there, and they put some cyanide in your meal or something, and they just take care of the body. You know, they think that it's supposed to be very progressive culture over there. You know, so it's like, you know, rather than find, you know, young Johnny hanging himself under your house, you can do it in a more kind of, you know, way that it's not, you know, more less, you know, frightening for the family. You just pay some money, book in the suicide motel. Because, you know, even though there's so many problems in the world, and so much turmoil and so many things, generally people of the world, they don't really want to hear about it, especially here in the West. They just want to ignore it. You know, they just want to escape into their own little illusory universe, where they just absorb themselves in the TV, or, you know, sport events or internet. So there's one girl here just recently, she's from India, and I was telling her how people in India are really into the cricket, you know, and one time the Australia, they beat India by 1 run, and the whole of India went into depression. And she said, yeah, even my uncle, he's really into the cricket. He's got this like a Foxtel station on his TV, and he can get any cricket that's going on anywhere in the world, and it's going 24 hours a day, the TV. And one day he was outside and working in the garden or something, so she turned the TV off, and then he called out, "Turn it back on." I can hear it out. Yeah, people just want to just absorb themselves in the sporting events, internet, you know, they just absorb themselves in their work. They become workaholics or alcoholics, or they just absorb themselves in the family, or, you know, people, you see there's thousands of people now just going to the gym. The gym's become the big thing, you know, just people, they're like they're just gymaholics. They just every day in there. You know, people absorb themselves in movies and, you know, and however, when difficulties do happen to come, you know, in their life, we see that people, they try and take shelter, but they don't take shelter of the Lord, like Maharaj Pariksit, you know, and fix themselves in devotional service. They simply, you know, they take shelter of their mind or their intelligence, or they take shelter of their sense gratification or intoxication, or they take shelter of those infallible people who can't help them, you know, like psychiatrists and psychologists and people like that. But in Bhakti Yoga, when the difficulties come, we learn to take shelter of the Lord. You know, we just like we read those beautiful prayers by Queen Kunti. She was praying, wasn't she? That the calamities would come again and again, so she can take shelter of the Lord more and more. So as devotees, we try and see difficulties and obstacles that come into our life as part of our spiritual journey. You know, reality is that, you know, living in this world, it's not always going to be so perfect and complete and smooth sailing. It's not always just like you know, just in general, not as even devotees, but just living in this world, it's not always just going to be like sunny beaches and nice food and good friends and, you know, and for people out there, nice movies and tennis. It's not going to be just, there's something else also. Birth, death, old age, disease, you know, miseries coming from the body, miseries coming from the mind, all the stress, anxiety, miseries coming from other people, other living entities. It's like in summer you get all the mosquitoes coming, in summer you get the flies. Because you've got heat, cold, you know, miseries coming from the demigods, wind, rain. There's also got the dualities of life, you know, the honour and dishonour, success and failure. However, in Bhakti Yoga, we see that whatever happens in our life, whatever obstacles or difficulties or troubles, are simply part of our spiritual journey. It's just Krishna, he's a supreme sculptor, chipping away at all those things which are preventing us from achieving pure devotional service. Just lessons we need to learn, like stepping stones, to take us places in our spiritual life where we never would have gone without them. So in our bhakti school we learn that ultimately all obstacles that come to our life are there simply to help us and inspire us to take shelter of the Lord. And of course Krishna also, for us devotees, there's also tests there, tests and exams. And as you get more and more advanced in spiritual life, sometimes the tests are even more difficult. And exams. Just like when you go to college or university, they have exams. Why do they have exams? Just to see how attentive people are in their studies, if they've been doing their work. So similarly, exams and tests for us, just to see if we're being attentive in our spiritual practices. And if we've been chanting our rounds, we've been reading the scriptures, associating with devotees, trying our best to try and step out of our comfort zone and try and do some sacrifice our energy in Krishna's service, if we're trying to be sincere devotees and really trying to please Krishna and the spiritual master, living the purest spiritual and godly life, when the tests come, we'll easily pass the test. And when we pass the test, we go on and make more spiritual advancement in life. However, if we haven't been very attentive in our spiritual practices, if we haven't been chanting our rounds, we've got slack, we're not reading the scriptures. You know, when you don't read these scriptures, these books by Srila Prabhupada, what happens? You start losing perspective of why we're here, what the purpose of Krishna consciousness is. You may even come to the point where you start thinking, well, what am I doing here? You know, you forget about why we're doing devotional service. You know, here I am, I'm doing all this work, not getting paid, no holidays, sacrificing all my energy. You lose perspective of what the whole purpose of Krishna consciousness is, what Bhakti Yoga is. So every day, you know, reading the scriptures, also associating with devotees very nicely, appreciating the Vaishnavas, not committing offences. But if we're not practicing Krishna consciousness very nicely, when the tests come, and we see this sometimes, it happens with devotees, they become bewildered. And they may fail the test. Of course, it's not the end. You know, there's always other opportunities to overcome the tests. But Yeah, so this Bhakti Yoga, it's based on developing a very positive attitude in Krishna consciousness. And the depth of our positive attitude is very much determined by how much realized knowledge we have. And now that's why we need to read these scriptures every day. At least an hour a day if we can. I know David Swami, he likes his devotees to read 2 hours a day. Especially his Sankirtan devotees who are going out there doing books. But he makes it, they have to at least read 1 hour a day. Especially when you're going out there preaching, you need the spiritual strength. And of course, enlightenment comes through sincere endeavours in practicing Krishna consciousness and trying to sacrifice our energy in Krishna service.